Okay. Purpose of the report is to request first three readings. If this bylaw is adopted, it'll establish the 5-year financial plan for January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2026. As council and the public's aware, due to COVID protocols, council chambers was closed to the public through budget deliberations. But we did present all budget meetings. They were live streamed on YouTube, which provided actually a lot more availability to members of the public who wouldn't have been able to otherwise attend. And we also launched Engage Kimberley earlier this year. So we had all the information on the budget available on that site as well, and an opportunity for public input. We didn't receive any public input through Engage Kimberley at this time. It was new. The first year we've tried it. I did receive a few emails to my work email address, and I responded to those. So people are paying attention. I think that Pam had some information on the number of views to the information on Engage Kimberley, and it sounded like folks were interested and were reviewing that. So just with regards to legislative requirements, we're required to adopt a 5-year financial plan before May 15th of each year. The plan, according to section 165 of the community charter, it needs to provide separate amounts for each of the revenue and expenditure categories identified in the community charter. That's identified in Schedule A of the bylaw that's attached to the staff report. And it's also required to set out the objectives and policy with regards to the revenues and expenditures, and that's set out in Schedule B of the financial plan bylaw. So I'm just going to hit on a few of the highlights that we discussed through the budget deliberation process that kind of fed into the financial plan, resulted in the tax rates being set where they're at. So council did approve to expand a part-time position in the engineering department into a full-time GIS/engineering position. So there was $28,000 in new funding required there. Due to the ratification of the first ever collective agreement with the RCMP, there was a retroactive wage payment of $227,000. That's the top end of a range that they've provided. That's payable in 2022. We're going to be paying that out of a reserve that was created a few years ago in recognition that this day was going to come, where we were going to have to make some retro pay. Also associated with that collective agreement was a cost adjustment to the 2022 budget for the RCMP contract. That was about a $56,000 hit. And just given some of the challenges that we faced in 2022 with regards to the tax increase, council provided authorization to fund that out of that same contract, RCMP contract reserve for 2022. So it's not going to impact taxes this year, but we'll have to make up for that next year. And there were also a number of changes to the wastewater treatment plant budget from what was presented in the previous 5-year financial plan, the 2021 to 2025, just based on new and better information that was available. So the numbers that are included in this bylaw have been updated to the most recent information. Since the last budget meeting, which was on March 21st, there have been some additional budget requests that have come forward from the managers for a variety of reasons. So I'll just run through those really quickly because this report is the first time that council is being presented with these. The first one is the fire engine replacement, and council did approve this request at the April 11th regular meeting, or on April 11th. And that was to increase the previous budget for the fire truck by $7,778. The next one is an increase to the budget for the Center 64 roof and truss repairs. In February, the contract for that work was awarded. The previous budget for that was $493,322. And since the time of that award, pre-construction and site prep work has commenced, which has led to the discovery of a number of deficiencies that were not identified in the original scope of work. So the manager of Parks and Facilities is asking for a $75,000 increase to that budget so that those deficiencies can be taken care of within the scope of this project. And the manager is also advised that due to the aging condition of this building, there's a possibility that there will be additional deficiencies identified once they start ripping and tearing into that building. We're all hopeful that that's not going to happen, but she's just wanted to make it clear that it's entirely possible that she could be coming back to council at some point in time with some revised numbers. The next one that's new to the budget here is the City Hall entrance to the fire training room. This came about as a result of COVID, the desire to create a secondary access egress to City Hall. So that project was started in 2021. There was a $30,000 budget, $10,000 of that was spent in 2021. There wasn't a request to bring the balance forward, but to comply with BC OH&S regulations in preparation for the renovation work, a pre-renovation hazardous assessment was done, and it was identified that there are some hazardous materials that need to be removed. So the manager of Parks and Facilities is requesting that the unspent funds from the 2021 budget, as well as some additional funding for a total of $34,849 be added to the capital budget for this year. And that would be funded from the COVID-19 Safe Restart grant funds that we have. A couple more here, conference center repairs. As council is aware, RCR currently operates the conference center under agreement with the city. The operators identified or made the city aware of some concerns that they had with the building. There was some cracking as a result of settling. So the city arranged for a structural assessment to be undertaken of the facility. There were some small deficiencies identified. And so in addition to the $10,000 that we budget on an annual basis to look after any capital expenditures with that facility, the manager is requesting an additional $18,614 to look after the deficiencies that were identified through that structural review. The next one relates to the water system. There was a pre-existing budget for the replacement of a pump station skid at the Mark Creek chlorination station. The original budget was $32,800. It's been identified that through the capacities that were realized, pumping capacities that were realized in 2021, that we need larger pumps installed, and there have also been some inflationary increases since the original budget quotes were received. So the manager is requesting that budget be bumped from $32,800 to $47,563, so an extra $14,763. The next one is actually removing something from the budget. The fire department originally had battery replacement or battery upgrades for the SCBA of $16,000, and due to a 40% increase to the budget since the quotes were received on that, the chief has identified that it's cheaper just to continue operating with the current battery. So he's asked that $16,000 be removed to help fund this next project, which is the addition of an office in the EOC fire training room to be utilized by current fire department staff. So that's $12,000. Yeah, so those changes have been included in the 5-year financial plan bylaw as presented. So if council proceeds with first three readings and adoption, they will be approving those expenditures.
Councillor McBain.
Yeah, just a comment. I think we, as we look at some of our aging infrastructure repairs that need to be made, I think we just need to do seems like we need to do a little bit better job of kind of prepping for some of this work and scoping the work. When I see things for abatement of hazardous materials, it kind of shouldn't be surprising that we find things like that. I mean, you open up any house in Kimberley and you're probably going to find something like that. So just a general comment. I think we just, need to be a little bit more vigilant, I think, on scoping for some of this stuff. I mean, it's it needs to be done, and I'm all for completing this work, but yeah, just a little more vigilance.
Yeah, good comment. Appreciate that. I hope for the same. It's not, I don't enjoy coming back to council and looking for money all the time. A few of these projects, Center 64 and the City Hall in particular, there was a change of the guards. There was a change in managers from the start to the finish. So yeah, I think it'll be a little bit tighter in the future. Just for information, the last bit here, the 2022 to 2024 resort development strategy. Scott had presented a report to council on April 11th advising that the province has agreed to extend that program for another 3 years. And they've provided us with the amounts that were anticipated to get through that program. And later on the agenda, there's a report asking for council approval of the resort development strategy, which identifies the funds coming in and what they're going to be spent on. So just a heads up that the financial plan as presented doesn't include that information. We were basing the numbers on the 116,500 that we were getting under the previous RDS. For 2022, we're actually getting $170,221. But we haven't included that in this 5-year financial plan pending approval of the resort development strategy by Scott and by the province. So that'll come about through a financial plan amendment bylaw at a later point. So that's about it, unless there's any questions. The bylaw is attached for council's information. There's a lot of information in there. It's in large part updated from previous years, just to include the new information. But yeah, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Council, questions? I have a couple of comments, if I may, Jim.
Please.
The world we live in these days, notwithstanding Councillor McBain's comments about some of the scoping, the world we live in these days has to do with ever escalating cost. And by the time we get RFPs out, get them back, analyze and everything, chances are pretty good the cost has gone up by at least 2 or 3 or 4%. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. And for the foreseeable future, it may be worthwhile for us to look at even building in some contingency to account for that, so that we don't have to, come back, and redo the bylaw. I would also like to commend staff for the management of the COVID restart budget. As we heard, there were a number of these items that are covered in 100% by the funds that we got. I think we're making very judicious use of those funds. They're going to have long-term benefits, not just short-term, but long-term benefits for our facilities. And I guess my last comment with respect to a lot of the costs that were added on, we have very healthy reserves in place that we've worked hard to build up over the last 5 or 6 or 7 years. And it's really nice to be able to look at these expenditures and say we have the money in the reserves and not have to come back and look at tax increases to be able to pay for, these very needed items. So once again, great job, Jim, to you and the rest of your staff on the fiscal management that and the rigor that you've applied to our fiscal management.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that.
Okay. Hearing nothing further, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. All right, next up, we have the City of Kimberley 2022 tax rates bylaw for the consideration of first three readings. Mover, please. Councillor Kiddo, thank you. Councillor Roberts seconds. Discussion. Over to you again, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So another second of the three statutory bylaws that we need to pass tonight, or give three readings to tonight. This bylaw in particular sets the rates for municipal, hospital, and regional district taxation purposes for 2022. It also establishes the payment due date for taxes this year of July 4th, after which a 10% penalty will be applied to any 2022 taxes not paid. This bylaw also needs to be adopted by May 15th. The municipal tax rates this year represent a 5.58% increase over the 2021 tax collection. And that increase is the same across all property classes from residential, utilities, light industrial, business, and recreation. The 5.58% increase follows 2 years of nominal increases as directed by council in an effort to lessen the financial burden placed on property owners by the COVID-19 pandemic. The average annual increase over the last couple of years has been 0.8%. And it's really resulted in the city losing pace with the significant inflationary impact that the pandemic has had. If you look at, well, if you go back the last 3 years, 2019, we had an increase of 2.22. 2020, we had an increase of 0. 2021, we had an increase of 1.6%. So we're looking at 3.82% over the last 3 years. BC CPI is increased by around 7% over that same time period. So we've really lost some ground. So that 5.58% might sound like a lot, but it's following a couple of years of some pretty low increases. Just with regards to taxes in 2022, council, with the flat tax levy on improved residential properties, reduced the 2021 levy of $386 to $306 for 2022. And the levy on unimproved residential properties for the flat tax remained unchanged from last year at $386. So that $80 reduction to the flat tax resulted in about a $325,000 shift over to the variable tax, just to ensure that we're not losing any tax revenue in total. So I've got illustrated in the staff report there, the total estimated tax adjustment at varying levels of assessed value. So the average assessed value for single family home in Kimberley in 2022 is $426,770. And the total amount of tax paid on that variable tax on that average property is $2,270. The flat tax levy is $306. The aquatic center parcel tax, which I'll discuss here, is $205.67. So $2782.59 on the average single family home. And that's just the municipal portion of the tax. So if you look at, for example, a $400,000 assessed value home, the total estimated adjustment from last year to this year is about $126 in total. With regard to the aquatic center parcel tax, just due to the extended closure of that facility, the aquatic center, during the pandemic, the council had reduced the aquatic center levy from a rate of $198.36 in 2019 down to $88.51 last year. So this year we're bringing that up to pre-pandemic levels, really is what the adjustment is all about. So the rate is $205.67 for 2022. As I mentioned earlier, we're also setting the tax rates for the RDEK and the regional hospital with this bylaw. With the RDEK, they provide us with a letter that gives us a requisition or the amount of money that they want us to collect on behalf from our citizens on the behalf of the regional district and the hospital for the services that they provide. So in 2022, the RDEK has asked us to collect $934,814, which is an increase of 4% over the last year's requisition. The hospital district, they're asking us to collect $656,780, which represents an increase of 31.7%. And council's heard me talk about this the last couple of years. Since 2019, the hospital district requisition has increased by 250%, about $470,000. So they're playing a bit of catch up there. There weren't any increases for a number of years to that hospital requisition, and the RDEKs had advised that these big increases over the last number of years are meant to build reserves so that they can get some major capital projects done at the hospital. So all of that money that we collect for the RDEK and the regional hospital district, we need to remit to them by August 1st, regardless of whether or not we've collected it or not. We don't get to keep any of it as an administrative fee, but I guess a bit of a trade-off is that the RDEK and the regional hospital district tax that isn't paid on time gets hit with that same 10% penalty. We get to retain the revenue from those penalties, but yeah, certainly a bit of a trade-off there. So I've also provided a chart of their regional district requisition. So the $934,000 that we collect from them, that chart just provides the breakdown on what the services that they're providing for that money. As you can see, the vast majority of it is the central solid waste function at $622,000 in 2022. So for the regional district and hospital taxes for 2022 on the average single family home at $426,770, that home will pay approximately $360 in tax. We also collect tax for a few other agencies: BC Assessment, Municipal Finance Authority, and School Tax. BC Assessment and Municipal Finance Authority, it's relatively minor. It's $14.98 for both of those agencies in 2022 on the average home. And school tax, those rates hadn't been received at the time of writing of this report. But the school tax that's a fair chunk as well. Of all the taxes that are on the tax bill, the city retains approximately 75%, and the other 25% go to these other various agencies. So yeah, attached is the bylaw that sets the rates for the municipal, regional district, and regional hospital for council's consideration the first three readings.
All right, thanks for that summary, Jim.
Yep.
Council, any questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Goodwin.
You may have just said it and I missed it. When do you expect the school district's assessment?
They sent the rates through actually at 3:17 today. So when I said it wasn't at the time of writing. So what I'll do when I bring the bylaw back for adoption is I'll have a bit of a pie chart with all of the various taxes so that public and council can get an idea of how big a piece of pie each agency has.
Further? So a couple of comments, I guess, if I may. First, with respect to the hospital tax. I'm going from memory, but I think it might have been as many as 10 years that there were no increases to the taxation.
Long stretch.
The hospital district funds 40% of the capital improvements in our region, our hospital district region. Interior health are 60%, and we fund 40%. And while there were modest capital improvements that were going across, the hospitals in our region, all the way from Golden down to Creston, there were no increases that were taken. And suddenly we're faced with aging hospitals, aging facilities, and the amount that is required not only now, but will be required in the future is substantially higher, as no big surprise it is with a lot of things. And so, as Jim had said, the district is now playing catch up and trying to build a reserve that's going to be strong enough to be able to deal with the capital cost requirements over these next number of years. And I guess my other comment, again, I take a look at the combinations of reserves and the way, staff manage through the acquisition of money to get things done. Really, the 5.5% increase this year is almost exclusively pointed at inflation, both catching up what we had not bothered to take through COVID over the last couple of years, plus the 2.81% that we have taken in this year's budget for an inflationary factor. If you add both of those up, it comes to just under 5.5%. So we've managed to keep our spending on things that we need to do whole. And again, I would suggest that staff have done an awesome job of just tiptoeing through the minefield on this thing. We remain in very, very solid shape with the projects that we need to get done. And this is a catch-up year. All right, hearing no further questions, we'll call the question on the first three readings of this bylaw. All those in favor? None opposed. The motion is carried. And next, the third and final, pardon me, is the City of Kimberley bylaw number 2719, which is the City of Kimberley parcel tax imposition bylaw. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Roberts moves. Councillor Dallum seconds. Okay, one more time, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I did refer to the aquatic center parcel tax in my previous staff report. So the purpose of this bylaw is to establish the parcel tax levy related to the aquatic center for 2022. As mentioned before, we're proposing to set the levy at $205.67. That's for every parcel of property in town as per the bylaw. Last year, the rate was $88.51. That was down from a rate of $198.36 in 2019. And that drop was due entirely to the pandemic and the extended shutdown of that facility related to the protocols resulting from the pandemic. When we set the parcel tax levy in 2020, that was before we were fully aware of the extent of the shutdown. So we had set it at a level where there was just going to be, I think we anticipated a 3-month shutdown of the aquatic center, after which it would open. So what ended up happening is the levy was set higher than what we needed it to be, which resulted in about $361,000 of additional revenue being collected, more than we needed to offset the deficit, the operating deficit for that facility, which is the purpose of the parcel tax. So what we did is we took that $361,000 and put it into reserve at the end of 2020 with the intention of reducing the levy in 2021, essentially giving that money back to the ratepayers. So that's how we were able to drop the levy down to $88.51 for 2021. When we went through and did the calculation on the operating deficit for the facility for 2021, we didn't need that full $361,000 to offset the deficit. We actually ended up collecting more revenue than what we had anticipated in the budget. So there was about $61,000 left. So we were able to take that savings, that $61,000, and apply it to the calculation of the 2022 parcel tax levy. So it resulted in a reduction of about $13 to the 2022 levy. So it would have been probably would have been around $219. So we probably won't have those kind of savings next year. So we'll have to make up for that. But through the use of that reserve, we were able to bring it down. So again, the purpose of this bylaw is to set the levy for 2022. The debt payments that we make on this facility associated with the construction of the pool, it's about $220,000 a year. That debt is set to expire in 2025, after which council will have the option of reducing the aquatic center parcel tax levy. So at today's parcel tax count, that would mean a reduction of about probably about $43. So we'll be having that discussion in the next couple of years here as far as what council wants to do with that. But yeah, any questions?
All right. One more comment, I guess. Notwithstanding the debt portion, notwithstanding the debt portion, the balance of that parcel tax is operating money. It's what costs us over and above our revenue in order to operate the aquatic center. And through the pandemic, I know there were numerous letters and phone calls that we got in from both users of the facility, but more importantly, the ratepayers wanting to know where the rebate was. If the aquatic center was going to be closed, where's the rebate? You know, how do we get our money back? And that's really to, I guess, suggest what you're saying, Jim, just another way is that's why this has been going up and down, is we have been giving the money back, you know, as we have been able to do that. And where we are now going into the current year with the facility open full time, we're now at basically where the parcel tax should have been for the last couple of years had the facility not being closed.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that sounded a little more complicated than I wanted it to make, but Sandra, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Complicated was the word that was coming to my mind while you were talking, and everything that you have had discussed with us in the last 3 motions here have been about extremely complex issues. And I really want to thank you and your staff for having been able to dispense the information to us over a period of time, have firm discussion on it to help us clearly understand it. And so we are making well-informed decisions as to how we need to move forward. And we certainly couldn't have done that without your input and the manner in which you present to us so that it's perfectly clear. So we thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I really appreciate those comments. Thanks.
All right, anything further? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Council. Thanks for your patience over the last 6 months here. We've been doing this.
A little more to come.
Yeah, start again in a couple of months.
That's one thing that, you know, that I think, you know, I and the rest of council have come to appreciate is that budgeting is basically a 10-month job,
Really is.
you know, for the municipality. So, yeah, it's not something we just spend a month or two on or a few weeks on and away we go.
Thanks.
Okay. Q Manager Pollock, as we move into the next item, which is the development permit for Purcell Collegiate. And the motion on the floor is that council approve the development permit subject to the conditions identified in the motions and staff report. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor McBain, thank you. Councillor Dallum seconds. Discussion. All right, Troy, we've been waiting for this for a while. It's been marshaled along very nicely, and although it was a long read, it was a pretty good read. Can you give us the summary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so the long-awaited development permit decision for the Purcell Collegiate International Boarding School. This is for phase 1 of that project. That's to be constructed, of course, on part of the Purcell Golf property, formerly Kimberley Golf Course property. Just as a bit of a real quick refresh, we've been kind of laying the framework or the foundation for this for a little while here in terms of process and review. So way back in 2019, council adopted an amendment to the OCP bylaw to redesignate the lands here for commercial development. And then a few months later, in August of 21, adopted bylaw 2695 to amend the zoning to the CD7 zone. And since then, we've been working with the proponents on their subdivision application, which was completed in November of 2021, as well as their development permit for the changes to the golf course, which council approved in September of 2021. So the phase 1 area of the campus includes the principal academic building and all that goes with that, the multiple classrooms and learning areas, the gymnasium, the student housing, commercial kitchen and dining hall areas. It's in total, there's over 10,000 square meters or 110,000 square feet. I think this will certainly be the biggest facility we've seen built in a long time in Kimberley. In addition to that, there's various outdoor learning spaces, playing fields, a landscaped area. And so the whole phase 1 campus is designed for initial intake of 150 students and to allow for the future expansion, the student housing and additional classroom spaces to accommodate eventually up to around 300 students. The plans, of course, are attached here to the staff report. Phase 2 of the campus plan, which will be considered under a separate future development permit application, but that's the additional sports fields and play fields that'll be south of the phase 1 campus area, between this section and the river on other golf course lands. And just as a reminder, the buildings planned to be constructed starting this spring here, and so the holes number 7 and 8 from the golf course will be disrupted or closed to allow for the construction, and eventually the construction will be expanded to include holes 6 and 9, and those holes are replaced by a couple of holes that were constructed last summer, and the additional expanded area, or at least part of the expanded golf course area, is already seeing some tree clearing and land preparation there to make way for those new golf holes there. So all in all, the proposed development plan and the building design aligns with the objectives and design guidelines in the official community plan. There's a number of different design strategies that they've incorporated into their plan that make for obviously a very, very attractive and functional, accessible building. The proposed site and building plan complies with the zoning requirements for things like building setbacks, building height, site coverage, floor space ratio, parking requirements. All those things are all satisfied by this building, and thanks part to such a large site for such a large building. We've talked about this at the various approval stages. The close proximity of the site to existing infrastructure allows for efficient extension of utilities and road connections. All of the vehicle access for staff and visitors and deliveries to the campus will be from St. Mary Lake Road to minimize any direct traffic or parking impacts to adjacent property owners and residents. As part of the development permit review process, the proponents were required to do a traffic impact assessment, which has obviously since been completed, and its findings accepted by the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. Through that process, the proponent has committed to install illumination lighting at the intersection of St. Mary Lake Road and Highway 95A. And they're going to, in addition to that, they'll have committed to build an accessible pathway and sidewalk link, connecting the campus area to the Marysville commercial area to the east of the site. And they've committed to build that by October 26, or prior to occupancy of the expanded dormitory area for the additional students. The servicing plan's been reviewed back and forth a bit. There's still some further revisions required to that are recommended as condition of development permit approval. And they're agreeable to make those few design detail changes. The proposed campus will have two connections to the municipal water system, one on the north and one on the southeast side of the building, and it'll connect to the municipal sewer system down on 302nd Avenue, close to where the proposed wastewater treatment facility is. So that's it as a high-level overview. Apologize for the lengthy resolution there, but really just some standard conditions to ensure we get all of the last little details correct here as the plans progress. I believe the proponents have indicated they're anticipating submission of building permit application here in the next couple of weeks, and we've got a meeting set up later this week to kind of go over some of those details and prepare for the next stage.
All right, excellent, Troy. It's a big project, so having comments. I think, again, one more comment, or a comment, if I may. So this project has been planned and underway in some way for the better part of 4 to 5 years now. It's a large project, not just from a building point of view, but from a business point of view. And the number of moving parts on this thing have been absolutely phenomenal. I think it would be it would be appropriate to have the proponents come in as a delegation to council sometime in the next not too distant future and just remind us and have a little bit of talk about the finalized plans now and how they expect that to unfold. The facility itself, the big deal about it is the education side of it, the business side of it, and it would be worthwhile, I think, for us to have an update like that. Okay, unless there's any further questions, I will call the question. All those in favor? The motion is carried. One more development variance permit, and that is the permit for 400 Stemwinder Drive. And the motion on the floor is that council approve development variance permit with the intent to vary the Alpine zoning bylaw to reduce the number of required parking spaces from 3 to 0 to allow for the proposed renovation and increased number of accommodation units in 400 Stemwinder Drive, which is Mountain Spirit. Mover, please. Councillor Kiddo, thank you. And seconded, Councillor Goodwin. Go ahead, Troy.
I'll keep this much shorter. I think this has been more recently reviewed by council with the previous variance for the first phase of this renovation of the Mount Spirit building. So this will add 2 more accommodation units and triggers the requirement to reduce the parking requirement from 3 spaces down to 0, all of which can be accommodated nearby on in front of the building on adjacent lots or across in the day skier parking lots. We've received no correspondence or submissions on this, apart from the letter provided from the applicant that's attached to the report there. Like I said, it's our opinion that there's no adverse impact from the proposal. There's ample parking nearby to accommodate that. We're recommending approval.
All right, awesome. Any further questions or comments, council? All those in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you, Troy.
You bet.
Okay, next up under new business, we have the 2022-2023 Trust Community Initiatives funding allocation. And the motion on the floor is that council approve the Community Initiatives Program funding allocation totaling $100,408.82 as provided by the Columbia Basin Trust. Motion, please. Councillor McBain, thank you. And seconded, Councillor Kiddo. Pam, could you give us a summary, please?
Yes, of course. Thanks very much for an excellent community initiatives meeting that we held on April 13th. I think the majority of the applicants came and were able to give council a short 2-minute presentation on their initiative. And thanks so much to council for voting so quickly and that we could get this put together and get it to the RDEK pretty quickly here.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are 2 items on here that are items that we would be contributing less than $10, and I would like to recommend or make a motion that we consolidate those 2 items into another item to make it more substantial for one and save the cost of the check and the mailing of the others.
All right, good suggestion. Do we do that as an amendment to the motion? Or how would it motion within the motion?
You would do that motion first. So as long as it someone seconds it.
Okay, Councillor McBain seconds. Go ahead, Scott.
We should probably identify which group those smaller pots of money will go to in this motion.
I did have a look at that, and there is one group that we are just falling short of their $500 requested. We have them slated for $483, and the additional $833 from the other 2 would bring their total close to their $500. And that particular group is the East Kootenay Regional Science Fair Society.
Okay.
Bring them pretty much bang on to what they asked for.
We'll include that as part of that motion.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's included.
You're okay with that, Councillor McBain? Yeah. Okay, further comment? All those in favor of the reallocation, motion is carried. Okay, any further comments with regard to the larger allocation? Hearing none. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Thanks so much, Pam. I know
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
it's somewhat tedious work to get that done, but very worthwhile for the not-for-profits in the community that are looking for the cash. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, next up is the Transit Annual Operating Agreement, and the motion is that Mayor and CAO be authorized to execute the 2022-2023 Annual Operating Agreement for the Kimberley Transit System. Councillor McBain moves. Councillor Goodwin seconds. Troy, back to you. Can you give us the summary, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a very routine matter, really. It's the annual transit operating agreement that you know we've already based our budget projections for the upcoming year, and then the financial plan based on the preliminary budget information provided. So the annual operating agreement does kind of provide some updated terms to that, but we're within the range there, and you know, there's no significant changes in the terms or conditions there of the operating agreement. So recommend approval, and we'll sign this and send it back to BC Transit.
All right, excellent. Questions? Hearing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Next up, we have the Resort Development Strategy for 2022-23 through 24-25. And the first motion on the floor would be that the staff report on the RDS be received. Councillor Kiddo moves and Councillor Dallum seconds. Discussion. Scott, did you want to take this one?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further to my report from April 11th, seems like just a meeting ago, we've done our best to complete a whirlwind consultation process in, I believe, 14 working days. So my thanks to John Hamilton from TK, Matt Lamb from the Chamber of Commerce, Ted Funston from RCR, and Jim Hendricks helping out as well. Typically, this has been done in the past by the Economic Development Office, but we stepped in and did our best to get this done. John Hamilton from Tourism Kimberley early in the process suggested a stage. Right now we have plywood and sort of self-constructed stages that degrade when they're stored outside. They're not much to perform on, I would imagine. So we put that idea on our straw man, we'll call it, put a few projects forward, and that one seemed to gain the most traction with the group. So what we've done here is we proposed letting the carryover accumulate for a year or two, and do sort of one major project, which would be a bandstand. Location to be determined, but leading candidate for a place would be Coronation Park. I think we could have some pretty good events over there, have a permanent stage, and sort of reduce the barriers for artists if they want to come to Kimberley and perform, or for our own homegrown talent. A couple smaller projects that are proposed, a Google 360 virtual tour of Kimberley. A lot of people like to travel to a community online before they actually come check it out in person. So that was an idea put forward by the Chamber. As well, some LED lighting towers. One tower funded out of this program, primarily for ski racing. This is for the Dreadnought ski event, but other events as well. The LED towers could also be used for events downtown, and would come in very handy in case of emergency as well. So those are the main projects. Forgive me if I forgot anything, but I'm having technical difficulties here and going off the top of my head. The consultation process was pretty fun. Engage Kimberley, so we did get some results from that process, some really good ideas, and I think those folks will be pleasantly surprised that we can fund a lot of those ideas out of the carryover from the last 3 years, which has been underspent. So, you know, the idea, although it would be nice to spend the money now and stimulate the economy, particularly the tourism sector, I think we can see some results early on by catching up on the carryovers. Platzl beautification being number one, improved wayfinding signage. Oh, thank you, Maurice, for the report. I'm almost done. So, you know, it kind of became about using the carryover funds. One idea that we heard a few times was river access. A little more complicated than I think we could accomplish in 14 days putting a plan together. But I really wanted that idea to be a seed that's planted, particularly with the wastewater treatment plant potentially being built down there. I think we could do some pretty incredible things as far as kayaking and river rafting and fly fishing. So with that, I'll leave it there and I see some questions.
All right, Councillor McBain.
I just wanted to say, Scott, and on all those involved, well done in doing this in a condensed schedule. And I like the fact that you guys are quote unquote taking your time a little bit to think through how best to allocate the money. And you know, like that was a great way to finish there talking about river access, because it is complicated and it does require a little more time and thinking. So it's just good prudent planning for you guys. So well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McBain. Councillor Kittle.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Scott, for putting that together in pretty short fashion. Doesn't look like a rush job. It actually comes across really well. It reads very well. Also agree with going with the major projects there. And I think the time delay is a good thing. It's going to give us plenty of time to decide where the best place for it to go. But yeah, well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kittle. This is one of the first, or certainly one of the few years that we've had some substantial dollars to be able to look at coming from the RMI program. It was only a few years ago, I think our annual allocation was about $65,000 in a year. It was just a pathetically small amount of money. So that pot has built up over the course of this last few years, and I think we will benefit from that. It's important to note that this money is for infrastructure building to make the experience that our visitors have here more positive. You can throw all the money you want at marketing and get people to come here the first time, but if the experience isn't good and they don't come back, you've actually wasted the marketing money. So this is an awesome 1-2 punch that's provided by the ministry, and these are awesome projects, Scott. Congrats on the process and coming up with this list. Anything further? Call the question. Councillor Roberts. Oh, thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, next up, we have the City of Kimberley check run in the amount of $476,300. What did I miss?
Two part.
Oh, the second,
resolution.
right. So the second part of that resolution is that we can actually execute the agreement and get the money, which is a good thing. And it is that council direct the chief admin officer to submit the RDS strategy to the ministry for their review. Councillor McBain moves and Councillor Dallum seconds. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, move the check run. Somebody going to move the check run? Councillor Goodwin moves. Councillor Roberts seconds. Okay. Any out of the ordinary items that anybody wishes to speak to? Councillor Roberts?
Nothing out of the ordinary this time, sir.
Right. Thank you very much. So hearing none, call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we have a few items of correspondence this evening. A couple of items that may require action and a couple of informational items. So let's deal with item number 1.1, I should say, which is the email from Lorna Hillman, Outreach and Engagement Coordinator, regarding the Moose Hide campaign. Mover to receive, Councillor McBain, thank you. Councillor Goodwin seconds. Do we have any comments? I think, unless somebody disagrees with me, I think this is would come under the category of a proclamation. And as we know, we have a bylaw in place that basically says we don't do proclamations. So unless council disagrees, we will do what we usually do with these, and that is provide feedback to the proponent and take under consideration actions that we may be able to take as the municipality to help promote in a way that is less than proclamation. Everybody cool with that? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Next up is the email from Marie Christine Cadieux, which is has to do with the fire protection in Meadowbrook. Could I have a mover to receive? Councillor Dallum, thank you. And Councillor Goodwin seconds. Do we have any comments? Go ahead, Councillor Roberts.
I thought if I was her, I'd be pretty scared too. It sounds as though it was a pretty scary event for all those little people. It's a little bit different when you've got some of those daycare kids there that aren't even mobile, can't walk by themselves like an elementary school might. I know that the folks out there have chosen year after year after year not to vote for fire coverage in their area. So I don't know whether it's possible for us to create a one-off situation because it's considered to be a school or a place of that nature, but I don't blame her for being a little bit concerned. I have no idea what the solution can be.
So in the last 10 years, there have been about 4 house fires out there, all about the same distance from town as the Meadowbrook School or the old Meadowbrook School. And basically the RCMP go out and they watch them burn. We have no jurisdiction, and Scott, you can help me out here, but I think there is more liability associated with us doing something like that than not.
Yeah, I think it's more a matter of stretching our resources thin, because if there's a fire out there and there's a fire in town, we probably don't have the capacity to respond to both. Childcare facilities and schools normally have emergency plans, which dictate what you would do in case of a situation like this. So I'm sure the fire department would be available to help review that, make sure they're on good footing, possibly even do a fire inspection out there. But as far as responding to emergencies, that's beyond our current capability.
Right.
We do on occasion respond to wildfires that are encroaching on city limits, but the purpose of that is to protect the inhabitants of Kimberley. So I know it's gone to referendum a couple times, 4 times,
4 times.
I see. And yeah, unfortunately, you know, it's really hard for a fire department to get the call when there's a home or a structure burning outside of city limits, but that's our current reality.
Yeah. Councillor Goodwin?
Does the RDEK have a fire marshal? Would they not be able to help with inspections and plans and whatnot?
I think they could help with an inspection for sure. So what's the follow-up on this?
Well, I think we should write back to them and suggest that they request some support through the Office of the Fire Commissioner. And then that would come through to Chief Prasad, and he can determine if and how he can assist them in any way.
Yep, very good. We don't need a motion for that. It's just a takeaway.
No, I'll
Awesome.
take that away to him.
Thank you. Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor? The motion is carried. 2 additional informational items. Could I have a mover to receive both? Councillor Goodwin, thank you. And Councillor McBain seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion is carried. All right, that concludes the regular agenda. We do have an item for in camera this evening, so we will have to move to that shortly. But before we do, we will open the floor for those who may be watching on YouTube to call in and ask questions or make comments on anything that was discussed in the meeting this evening. Should you wish to do that, you can call 800-741-7180. And when prompted, the meeting number is 2493-966-0170. And while we're waiting to see if anybody calls in, we will go around the table with councillor items. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just being fortunate to have spent the last 3 days in Nelson with the Association of Kootenai Boundary Municipalities and all the people that were interested in that. They had some wonderful presentations, real reminder of how awesome and crazy the Columbia Basin Trust is because what they've been through to get where they are today, that was really something. We had some pretty amazing speakers speaking on the concept of truth and reconciliation, including our dear friend Sophie Pierre, who is her topic of her presentation is always how can we be good neighbors, and she reminds us that we can't really move into reconciliation until we finally and clearly know the truth, and the truth is bigger than just the children in the ground. The truth is the difference in cultures and understanding each other's cultures and finding ways for us to work not like that and not like that, finding new ways to work in the middle so that we can move forward together. There was also a wonderfully, wonderfully gifted woman, an Aboriginal person from the Lower Mainland. I think she lives in Penticton now, and she spoke about the ethics and equity of our various political systems. And I tell you, I haven't listened so fast in years. She was trying to put a 4-day presentation into about 45 minutes, and it was really awesome. I told her I wanted to move into her house and follow her around for a while because what she has to present was just so enlightening as to how we could move forward and how we could look at things. And so I got a lot out of this weekend, and I'm happy to state that next year, the AKBLG will be held in Cranbrook, and I encourage any of you that are still on council to attend. Maybe even if you're not on council, it was really, it was really worthwhile. It was my time well spent.
Thank you, Sandra. Anything else?
That
Nope,
was
we're
it.
good. Nigel.
Sorry, after that total letdown, nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you for that. Councillor Dallin.
Just been busy as all and nothing official to report.
Okay, just busy,
Incredibly busy.
unofficially busy. Councillor Goodwin.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Oakley. Nothing to report.
He's been consistent recently.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, and I'm going to make it, well, 1 for 5. So no, I have nothing to report.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So I just want to follow up on just a couple of items very quickly. AKBLG, as Sandra said, was it actually exceeded expectations. I know we all got notice of kind of what the agenda looked like, and honestly, the agenda looked as it was laid out completely uninspiring. And I think that the message is when you're putting the agenda together, have somebody with some marketing sense to put the headings in there that actually reflect the presentations that are being made, because it definitely exceeded my expectations and ended up being a really, really good use of time. There was also another presentation I will make mention of, and that was by the CEO of the Municipal Finance Authority. He came in and talked about unlocking the potential for local government reserves, investment in reserves, long-term investment. It was a fascinating presentation, and he talked about a couple of the new products that the MFA have available for municipalities to be able to invest their reserves. The reality is that most of that is for the larger municipalities that have $1 bazillion sitting in reserves. Kimberley has about $21 million sitting in our reserves, which is a really healthy amount of money. But on any given reserve at any given time, as we saw earlier in the meeting tonight, we're using that money or allocating that money. And when it goes into these long-term reserves, they have to sit there for 10 years. You know, they can't be coming in and out. They're basically bonds that are being purchased. So, but nonetheless, it was opened up some ideas and was quite fascinating. The other presentation I will mention is Keith Baldry from Global TV. He's their chief political correspondent. Keith just talked about the political landscape and what was happening here in British Columbia over the last number of years and kind of where he thinks we're headed into the future. It was also a very enlightening and interesting conversation. As you could imagine, he has a lot of stories, and the stories were kind of cool. Okay, Maurice, anything?
We currently have 5 viewers on YouTube and nobody on the phone.
All right, Scott.
We are 3 hours away from closing the BC Small Town Competition against the lovely town of Ucluelet. So anyone out there in Radio Land, please vote. You still have a few hours, and we'll learn the results on Friday. But really, really fun to get involved and have some friendly rivalries with some great towns.
Yeah, thanks for that, Scott. I didn't mention it here, but half of my week last week, was dedicated to this Best Towns in BC thing. It has been a lot of fun. I know there have been some people that think it's, has been not such a great thing. But I can tell you at the end of the day, it's just been fun. Talking to the different mayors that have been involved and different folks, and quite honestly, our own community and how it's absolutely embraced the competition. It's just been fun to watch. So this is a blind vote today. In other words, we're not going to know which of our communities has won until Friday. So the CBC is planning a big reveal on Friday. And so we'll just have to stay tuned for the rest of the week and see how that works. Regardless, there are a number of two benefits I want to touch on. Thanks for bringing this up, Scott. I would have completely missed it. The first one is that after the absolutely brutal winter we had with respect to visitors, out of town visitors, and the accommodators being pretty much decimated, this has the potential to actually increase our visits to town here over the next summer with people from Lower Mainland and Okanagan and other parts of the province. So I think it will provide an opportunity for some of our businesses in town to be able to catch up on what they lost. The other advantage, and I always look for this, is that particularly Vancouver and Victoria in particular, when you get on the radar screen, we're alive, we're there, and it helps me advocate when things like this provide us with a profile. And one of the conversations that Baldry went through at AKBLG is how there's this big divide between the Lower Mainland, where all the votes are, and rural BC, where we may not have many votes, but the problems we have out here are just as big as the problems they have in the Lower Mainland. So, so this level of visibility also provides me an opportunity to advocate. So, I think and then the third thing is just the fun. It's fun being a winner. What can I say? So, stay tuned next Friday.
Mr. Mayor,
Thanks.
there was
Thanks,
also,
Scott.
there's one other add-on too that we picked up on this weekend, and that even though some of our communities that we've been competing against we have defeated royally, one could say, they are also benefiting from the mirror that's being shone right now on the Kootenays, and they've been feeling that as well.
Yeah, good point, Sandra. It really is an East Kootenay thing. Yeah, Kootenays in general, but mostly east. Okay, could I have a motion to move in camera? Councillor McBain, thank you. And Councillor Dallum seconds. All those in favor? Motion is passed. We will take a minute to disconnect from YouTube, and we have one item to discuss. Thanks, folks.